Hello there everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt December Sky. December Sky is a compiled version of the Thunderbolt ONA's first season and an adaptation of the beginning of the Gundam Thunderbolt manga. Gundam Thunderbolt is a gritty and violent look at the end of the one-year war from the point of view of two pilots, Fleming, the Federation pilot of the full-armor Gundam, and Daryl Lorenz, an amputee sniper chosen to take control of the terrifying Psycho Zaku. December Sky focuses on a little-known front of the one-year war, the Shoal Zone located at the former colony cluster Side 4 More. The aptly named Thunderbolt sector, due to its tendency to erupt into crazy space lightning storms, is the perfect place for Zeon snipers to whittle down the forces of the Federation's More Brotherhood. December Sky, released in 2016, includes new footage that was not in the ONA version and is fully dubbed in English. I've seen both the English dub and sub-Japanese audio version, and I have to say the dub is pretty damn good. The only thing that really took me out of the dubbed version is the fact that I cannot escape Johnny Young Bosch, which is no shade to him at all. He's a great voice actor and does a wonderful job as Daryl. But between my year-long watch through of Bleach, reviewing Code Geass, and now this, I just can't escape Ichigo no matter where I look. Io is voiced by Max Middleman, who also does a great job, and the funny thing is he also voiced Inaho in All Noah Zero, which I thought was a fairly boring performance. Just goes to show how important direction and character work are to voice acting, because he's phenomenal here. Speaking of phenomenal, hot damn does December Sky look amazing. When I did a retrospective of Gundam the Origin, I said that show was probably the best looking Universal Century anime, but I do think that Thunderbolt ties that spot. For one, the character faces are so detailed and expressive that all you need is a shot of their eyes to tell you exactly what is happening. On top of that, the mobile suits are all drawn in 2D, and even when CG is used, it's pretty hard for me to spot. The action is more bombastic than even something like The Origin, and there's never a moment where I could point out an obvious 3D model. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the story of Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt December Sky. We begin by watching the crew of the Federation capital ship, the Beehive, prepare for battle. Right away, Thunderbolt puts all the little details of ship life on display. I particularly like this group of guys smoking cigarettes into a little vacuum tube air filter device. Ensign Io Fleming prepares by listening to freestyle jazz in the cockpit of his RGM-79 GM. Io tells his mechanic friend Cornelius that he can't listen to his music through headphones because you gotta feel the jazz in your bones. Io is a total adrenaline junkie, and he flicks the triggers and pedals of his mobile suit before battle like an athlete stretching before a competition. As the squadrons of GMs launch into the Shoal Zone, Captain Claudia Pier pays tribute to the More Brotherhood, causing Io to think about how he is shackled to his homeland even after Side 4 has been destroyed. That is one really interesting thing about Gundam Thunderbolt. Both the Federation and Zeon troops belong to an interesting sub-faction of their respective side. The More Brotherhood are sworn to hunt down and destroy the Zeon invaders hiding in the wreckage of Side 4, and are primarily made up of survivors of the colony. Their ships and mobile suits are all specifically suited to their work, and while they receive support from a Federation operations base, it is content to simply supply them and stay out of the fighting. While the Brotherhood are technically part of the Federation, they owe their allegiance to the memory of Side 4 over the EFSF, and in turn are seen as an expendable militia force by the regular soldiers. On the other side, fighting for Zeon is the Living Dead Division, a company of men that have been wounded in battle and fitted with advanced prosthetics. While they can move the prosthetic fingers and feet, it causes them to suffer nerve pain and isn't as precise, so their maneuverability in mobile suits is much lower. This makes them perfect for their role as snipers in the Thunderbolt sector, strapped to huge rocks and chunks of debris with mounted rifles, picking off Fedi patrols from their hidden perch. But the Zeons don't equip their wounded with mechanical limbs out of a sense of duty or responsibility. They do it to gather data from the prosthetics for a secret project being developed during the battles at Side 4. As the Federation GMs fly in to attack the sniper positions, they begin to get picked off. But it isn't just the enemy sharpshooters they have to worry about, as we see one guy get smashed to bits by a piece of flying debris. Flying a mobile suit in space is just like driving a Camry down the highway, eyes on the road, man. This demonstrates just how dangerous the Thunderbolt sector is. If the Zeon snipers don't get you, the flying chunk of a former skyscraper probably will. Not even the main character of the Federation side is spared from having his GM blown up, as we see EO take a direct sniper beam. Luckily, it hit the top half of his mobile suit and he was able to eject in time, leaving his squad to get picked off. As we watch the Federation suits pop, the music switches from EO's wild jazz to the upbeat pop music emanated from the radio of Zeon sniper Daryl Lorenz. I love the very intentional change in tone as the genre of music each protagonist enjoys reflects their personality. Where EO is wild and energetic, claiming that he's only free on the battlefield, Daryl is more subdued, and that's mirrored in his soundtrack of pop and blues. While the Zeon squad think they've driven off the assault, they didn't count on EO approaching without a mobile suit. We get a better feel for EO's personality here as he forces open the cockpit of a Zeon named Hoover and shoots him in the head. The first thing EO thinks to do is insult Daryl's choice of music that he can hear over the comms unit, and then he proceeds to insult Daryl further by calling him peg legs. Yeah, EO is kind of a huge asshole, but I can't really blame him. I mean, we'll see in a bit that his entire life has been basically destroyed, and his only outlet is piloting a weapon of war. It is interesting to see the Federation protagonist being a huge dick and egotistical maniac half the time. EO is like the polar opposite of the original Gundam's Amuro Ray, where Amuro goes from being a bratty teen forced into a bad situation to a professional ace pilot with a sense of duty. EO is a violent man that expresses the regret of his stolen life by fully throwing himself into the violence of the battlefield with an almost psychotic hunger. What can I say though? It is really fun to watch. After EO dumps Hoover's lifeless body out of the cockpit, he proceeds to use the Dom's computer to reveal all the sniper positions and navigate back to Beehive with his plundered mobile suit, but not before exchanging names with Daryl and giving him a warning. When you hear jazz, EO is coming for you. EO returning with the Zeon Dom is a pretty big win for the Moore Brotherhood. They're able to rip the data out of its computer to learn a bunch of information on the Zaku sniper positions and troop rotations. However, the operation overall came at a high price, with only a fraction of the 24 deployed GMs coming back intact. We get to see just how little respect the bridge crew have for Captain Claudia, specifically her first mate Graham, who just says you can't expect good results from an operation planned by quote-unquote that bitch. The reason for their disrespect goes deeper than her inexperience at battlefield operations, as we see Claudia was promoted to acting captain after her previous commander's death. EO remarks that the same goes for him, he's only an ensign because he's been able to survive, though I think he kind of discounts his own skill in that assumption. Claudia and EO are both surviving members of the Side 4 ruling class as well, leading the crew to see them as privileged rich kids that got their positions through nepotism. A lot of the members of the Brotherhood blame the previous leadership of Moore for allowing Zeon to destroy their homeland, and that resentment has festered and continued on to people like Claudia and EO. The Federation has decided to send the Moore Brotherhood fleet a special prototype, and EO Fleming is the most qualified pilot. Claudia can barely bring herself to give him the order, revealing their previous relationship and how much she struggles with the possibility of sending her former lover to die. Well, she tries to be EO's former lover, but the second he has her alone in her office, they start making out, which the bridge crew can see, by the way. Not very professional, Captain. And so, with no other choice, EO Fleming is ordered to be the new pilot of the prototype FA-78 Full Armor Gundam. Daryl, back on the Zeon flagship Dried Fish, is asked by Professor Carla to kill EO as revenge for Hoover. Daryl seems pretty unbothered by the request. The sniper team is shown footage recovered from a destroyed Zaku that shows them being attacked by a new Federation mobile suit. When Captain Burrows pauses the footage, a feeling of dread falls over the room as they realize that it is a Gundam. By this point in the war, the RX-78 had been shitting all over Zeon for months and had built quite a reputation on both sides. The Federation pilots basically revere the Gundam, especially the younger ones, but to the Zeons, the Gundam is a morale breaker and a living horror story. I mean, before the Gundam came around, Char Aznable was the famous undefeated ace of Zeon, and the Gundam beat him over and over again, causing demotion and humiliation. So I really like that aspect of Thunderbolt, the Federation sending a new prototype Gundam just because they know it will wage psychological warfare on the enemy is a really good detail. Also, I really love the first-person footage taken from the Zaku. There's a clip of it uploaded on YouTube titled POV, You're Fighting the Main Character. And I think that's a really succinct description. As the full armor Gundam attacks the Zaku, the jazz music fades in and out, causing Daryl to realize that the pilot must be E.O. Fleming. The footage reminds me of some sort of shark attack as the Gundam effortlessly dives in and out, taking a bunch of chunks out of the Zaku. We cut to a battle between the opposing sides set around one of the destroyed colonies. The mobile suits dart in and out of the structure, and it gives a lot of variety to the backgrounds of these space battles. While waiting to launch, EO is daydreaming about how his father took his own life before Side 4 fell and how he found his father's body. This nightmare was spurned on by EO listening to one of his father's favorite songs, as pointed out by Cornelius. The music in this film is basically a character in itself, and was not placed in the show without regard to the character's mood. I really love how deeply they ingrained the OST to the experience. It's something they also do in the manga, but really being able to hear the music hammers that home. While EO thinks of his late father, Daryl thinks back to a medal ceremony for the Zeon Medal of Science, and the scene fades into his prosthetic legs being worked on by Carla. Daryl is helping the science team work on a prototype Zaku equipped with the reuse Psycho device, which sounds really evil, but this allows the mobile suit to be plugged directly into the pilot's nerve endings. As Daryl plugs his legs into the prototype, he begins to run with impressive mobility for a mobile suit. As he controls this huge machine, he thinks back to running along the beach as a carefree child, but the scene quickly transitions to a portrayal of war. It's here, during Zeon's invasion of Earth, that Daryl lost his legs to an explosion, all set to a somber blues tune that isn't subtle, but it is effective. This is pretty depressing, man. Daryl tells Carla that the system she has invented is wonderful, but she appears less enthused. We learn that she threw away that science medal that she received and is not the patriotic Zeon military scientist that you might think. Daryl and his squad set up a trap for the newly deployed Gundam, hoping to surprise it while it's out on a test flight. Unfortunately for Daryl, they're running so low on replacement parts that he is forced to pilot an old Zaku 1, which is at least cool to see, and it's apparently fine for the purposes of sniping the enemy, but did they have to leave the paint job bright yellow? It seems like kind of a bad idea. EO falls into the trap but doesn't really give a shit, figuring that it saves him the time of hunting them down. He begins systematically wiping out all the Zakus, taking out basically Daryl's entire squad before he's almost shot down by the ace sniper. It is only the incredibly timed and lucky arrival of a bolt of space lightning that deflects Daryl's shot at the last second. EO realizes that it is Daryl inside the Zaku 1 due to the extreme distance and accuracy of the shot, so he grabs the still alive Sean and uses his Zaku as a meat shield to fly at Daryl. Once EO is within the range he wants, he pulls the most disrespectful move I've seen in a long time, throwing Sean's Zaku and blowing it up, using the intense light to blind Daryl so he can close the rest of the distance. I mean, really, he used Daryl's friend as a flashbang grenade. EO pins and impales Daryl's Zaku with his beam saber, but the sniper is a quick thinker and detonates a grenade, giving him enough time to escape. Daryl has a dream about holding his father's hand on Christmas as a child, and then wakes up to find that he has lost an arm in battle. The Living Dead division has been worn down by the Moore Brotherhood's fleet, and now the newly arrived Gundam is running amok. Captain Burroughs receives orders to defend the Thunderbolt sector with their lives. This includes those on the science team, which doesn't surprise Carla at all. However, her colleague on the team, Sexton, really doesn't want to die for an uninhabitable piece of space full of rubble, so he tells Captain Burrows that their new prototype is ready for full field testing. Burrows reminds Sexton that the reuse Psycho device requires the Psycho Zaku to be hooked directly into all 4 of the pilot's limbs. Sexton reminds him that Daryl Lorenz just recently lost an arm, and the captain could simply give the order to have his final remaining limb amputated. Sexton tells Carla to perform the surgery to amputate Daryl's arm, but she refuses, and this is where we learn that the only reason Carla works for the military is because her father is being held in prison for treason. Sexton reminds her of what will happen to her father if their data is lost, and the Psycho Zaku is the only hope of saving the division. Daryl goes through the surgery while still mourning the loss of his other arm, and we see performing the procedure has a profound effect on Carla. As Daryl wakes up, we see he has a bunch of machines hooked into his missing limbs, all while the Psycho Zaku is being equipped for battle in the hangar. Daryl and his prototype mobile suit are both just tools for Zeon, and this scene makes me feel like they're being treated the same way. As Daryl continues to test the Psycho Zaku, he vows to use his new power to destroy the Gundam. The Beehive gets an influx of supplies from the Federation to prepare for a final assault against the Zeon invaders. Io and Cornelius watch the shipment of incoming gun cannons and GMs from the hangar bay and are shocked to see that the new pilots are all young teenagers. The kids stop and salute the Gundam. They've most likely heard stories of the Gundam and its pilot, and these are all kids that have come into their adolescent years surrounded by pro-Federation propaganda. So it makes sense that they would revere the mobile suit. Plus, at this point, the Federation is probably running out of soldiers, so sending kids into battle isn't that surprising. Io is mad about it and goes to see Claudia, only to find her floating in her cabin high off her ass. Io yells at her, but she retorts that he doesn't know how it feels to order people to their deaths, even children. She says that she now knows how Io's father felt after the deaths of thousands of people at Side 4, causing Io to think of his father's suicide again. Thunderbolt really does not shy away from showing all of its characters at their lowest points. It's downright dour, I would say. Meanwhile, Daryl is promoted to ensign after his surgery and seems to be in high spirits. He outwardly tells the celebrating crew that it was an honor to accept the order. This makes me wonder how much of this is just a mask that Daryl's putting on to cope with his situation. While Io has sacrificed his own humanity by becoming a bloodthirsty battlefield daredevil, Daryl has also done so by dedicating his life to destroying the Gundam and killing Io Fleming. Daryl speaks with Carla while Zaku pilots begin to launch ahead of the operation. Carla finally tells Daryl that her father is in prison for treason because he voiced dissent against the Zabi family. He was a historian, and we see in a flashback that he was missing an arm. I really like that small piece of character backstory for Carla, with her father being the reason that she got into studying prosthetics. He's also the reason that she's in the military now, with the system she invented to help people, making it so the wounded can continue to fight. Daryl shows unflinching optimism in the face of Carla's despair, saying that they should promise each other that they'll live through the war. That way they can figure out what comes after together. Carla then gives Daryl her hair tie, which he keeps wrapped around his arm while piloting the Psycho Zaku. Just as the XO Graham is about to take command of the Beehive, Claudia reappears, takes her seat as captain, and gives the order. The gun cannons and GMs are acting as a distraction for the waiting Zeon pilots so that the Gundam can skirt by and locate the Zeon fleet. Io gives a speech to all the junior pilots telling them that the full armor Gundam's only job is to destroy the Zeon flagship and their ace sniper. Io's speech does appear to inspire the kids, but it's definitely not a glorious or patriotic one. He's pretty realistic about how they are all probably gonna die, but he'll buy drinks for anyone that manages to survive. The squadron of gun cannons pretty much immediately waltz right into the Zeon firing zone and start getting blown up. No wonder they use these kids as decoys, man. They immediately start panicking and spinning in place, but they somehow manage to blow up the attacking Zaku just from sheer volume of fire. But they then get blindsided and slapped around by a Dom, so the feeling of victory is short-lived. While EO's objective is to locate the Zeon fleet, Daryl and another pilot named Leighton have a very similar objective: locate and disable the Beehive. Leighton fires his mounted beam rifle at the ship and is immediately blown up by return fire, but his role was simply a distraction to cover Daryl's approach. The Psycho Zaku effortlessly destroys the Beehive's escort ships and damages the capital ship. The bridge is nearly destroyed in the attack, and when Graham comes to, he sees that Claudia has given the order for the crew to abandon ship. Graham gets pissed off, saying that it's always the elite's fault and that he's not letting her run from her mistakes. Graham then shoots her and they both get sucked out into space through the newly broken window. There's a similar situation happening back at the Zeon fleet. EO locates the dried fish and is able to destroy the bridge. Sexton tries to get Carla to jump into an escape pod with him and the Data, but she refuses. And then we see the guy throw a wounded man out of the way to get to an escape pod. Carla heads directly to put her military training to use and mans one of the ship's anti-air guns. The Gundam flies by, but it's so fast that there's no hope of her targeting it, and the ship takes a blast from its beam gun that obliterates the cannons right next to Carla. With the Zeon capital ship crippled and lifeboats full of Federation personnel from the Beehive currently boarding it, EO finally comes across his rival, but this time Daryl isn't limited by the sluggish movements of a Zaku 1 or the reaction time of his prosthetics. The battle between the Gundam and the Psycho Zaku is an incredibly fun one to watch. The rivals blast through one of the dead colonies at Side 4, slamming into the walls of the maintenance shafts and eventually out into the silent city streets. It's an eerie backdrop for the final battle and adds a bit of visual variety over the mobile suits just shooting at each other in space. But it's not just the set dressing of this fight that is detailed, as the mobile suits make intricately animated movements to attack and change direction. This fight really is a visual treat that isn't just fun to watch, but it's also thematically and emotionally gratifying as we see both EO and Daryl become consumed by the power of their mobile suits and their desire to kill each other. The Gundam and Zaku continue to fight until they eventually exit the colony, both taking damage and a moment to catch their breath. EO purges the extra armor of the Gundam, marveling at the fact that it can still put up a fight. While the two ace pilots are entangled in their momentous fight, the survivors from the Beehive board the dried fish with orders to take the ship from the surviving Zeon soldiers. The boarding party isn't just made up of soldiers though, but personnel from every part of the Federation ship. Cornelius leads one party and finds the remaining Zeon crew all hanging out and listening to music. Cornelius and the others tell them to surrender, but it appears that taking the ship was not their only objective, as the soldiers start asking for Professor Carla. Cornelius is the one who finds her and two others attempting to blow up the entire ship and take all the Federation soldiers with them. While Cornelius talks Carla down, begging her to stop the killing, another soldier pings her position with a sensor camera and a mobile suit cuts through the hull and extracts her. It was a pretty neat plan, honestly, but when too much time has passed and the ship hasn't exploded, the Zeon soldiers go to Plan B and fight back, eventually suicide bombing the ammo storage area and heavily damaging the ship. With the full armor Gundam now down to basically the no armor Gundam, EO has no choice but to draw his beam saber and go in for a close range attack. He finds Daryl, who has crashed into the colony and is currently unconscious and dreaming about himself and Carla hanging out on a beach. And he has all his limbs, I might add. Just as EO is about to strike the final blow against the Psycho Zaku, a lightning bolt strikes the colony and wakes Daryl up. He fires a missile at the Gundam, causing its charge to miss. Daryl thanks Carla, saying that meeting her was a true miracle. When EO exits the wrecked Gundam, he sees Daryl doing the same, and wonders how he lost to a quadruple amputee. I guess that is quite a big hit to his ego. The real kicker is that a bunch of Zeon reinforcements arrive to help the Living Dead division right as it looks like the More Brotherhood could actually win. All that fighting on the dried fish and all those dead kids and GMs really did mean nothing in the end. EO Fleming is captured and held in the brig of the Zeon replacement ship, and while he takes heavy beatings and is kept in the dark, he doesn't hesitate to get the last word in on Daryl, saying that they are pretty much the same. They've both given up their humanity to mobile suits. Plus, as EO says, the war isn't over, and they are destined to continue fighting. Daryl doesn't really get to gloat in victory to EO as those words cut deep. I really like this scene where they blow up the damaged Zaku, and in the explosion we see the shadow of Daryl running. Carla seems to have gone crazy from all the trauma, so now they have her in this recovery chamber, and Daryl worries that when she wakes up, her reused psycho device will be mass-produced and more soldiers will choose to take the same fate he did. Zeon also captures the damaged full armor Gundam. Gundam Thunderbolt December Sky then ends with a montage version of the Battle of Aboaku, near the end of the 1-year war. While Daryl is out there piloting a regular Zaku unit, his prosthetic arm isn't responsive enough and nearly gets him killed. A horrifying reminder that he can no longer access the power that he sacrificed so much for. Meanwhile, the ship holding EO and the rest of the Federation's POWs is shot down and crash lands on the surface of the asteroid fortress, and we see a smiling EO covered in blood, having killed the Zeon guards, looking like he's ready to get right back into the action. And that is how Mobile Suit Gundam December Sky closes. I definitely found this one to be very enjoyable, and like I said, I watched through it twice. The constant pace and battles do make the runtime fly by, and I can see how it would be fairly confusing for a new viewer of the franchise, so I wouldn't recommend Thunderbolt as your first Gundam experience, but for anybody that's already versed in the world of the franchise, it's a treat. Of course, visually Thunderbolt is in the upper tier of Gundam adaptations, but it also has a great soundtrack full of original music that serves to elevate the story. I also really enjoyed the parallel journeys of EO and Daryl, having opposing protagonists that are compelling enough that you want to root for both of them is a big achievement. But the story of Gundam Thunderbolt is not over, as the rest of the ONA has been cut into the movie Bandit Flower, which is what we'll be taking a look at next time on the Gundam Retrospective. Thank you for watching, everybody, and have a great day. Hello everybody and welcome to today's end card. I want to start off by thanking all of the channel members, aka Batosai, Azure, Windress, Brian Sanchez, Chris Goodnow, Daniel Johnson, Dane O'Connor, Good Apollo, Grim07, Harmonious, Jason Carpenter, Jessica Solberg, Jay Lamb, Joe Castellanos, Joe Cavazos, Johnny G, Canto 20, McLean Nugent, Mackenzie Cunning, MB, Michael Lewis, Rother the Paladin, Sin Ryuki, The Crawl, Trey Hardy, The Twisted Mentat, Video Gamer 75, Zappa Slave, and Zach Jones. Thank you all so much for continuing to be channel members here of the channel. Thunderbolt was a really fun time. Like I said a couple of times, I ended up watching it twice, and I think you almost kind of have to because this movie is so fast-paced. They just cram so much shit into this thing all at once. So, like, I don't know. I feel like watching this one 2 times definitely was required viewing. Anyway, coming up next, we're going to be taking a look at Bandit Flower. Originally, I was going to do both of the movies in one video, but it seems like the story of Bandit Flower is not disconnected, but it takes place like 8 months after the end of the war and stuff, and I figured, why not 2 shorter videos? We'll try that out because the Code Geass video was like over an hour. So after that, we will have Code Geass Season 2 come out, and then I'm actually not sure what's next in the Gundam Retrospective. It might be Hathaway, or it might also be Gundam Build Divers, which I know everyone says is bad. So I'm excited to see it because I love seeing shit that everyone says is bad or weird. So I'm interested to see. I'm also thinking I might do the next Zoids video at some point in the start of this year here. I know the next Zoids is also bad, but I don't know, that might just be kind of fun. Anyway, if you would like to further support me, you can go ahead and subscribe. If you haven't, I would really appreciate that. There is also the gaming channel, which you can find linked below in the description, which we over there do pretty much unedited Let's Plays like you might have seen back in the day before before the new times. But we've been going through some fun stuff over there. We did the Gears of War original trilogy. I'm currently playing through Legend of Dragoon on the PS1, which is pretty fun. We did Kirby's Dream Land 2 on the Game Boy. So I just go through a bunch of old games and appreciate them because I think it's a fun time to go through like a bunch of old history for video gaming, stuff like that. Anyway, I'm gonna let you go. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again soon. Have a good night.